YouTube, welcome to a very special unboxing. I've got some pieces today that you probably never even seen, plus a few sleeper alerts for the future market in watches. I'm gonna start with a sleeper. Patek Philippe 5180 skeleton. I was always a fan of that watch. That watch came out a few years ago. They did it in a white, and then they also did it in a rose as a follow-up later. A watch that never really took off. It's still trading at a reasonable number, but I still feel that that's one to look for, because if you look historically, how many skeleton Pateks out there that you know of, right? Also, not a whole lot of watches on this type of mesh bracelet. It is under 100K, and as far as I'm concerned, people have slept on this watch, and there are less and less of them out on the market. I haven't seen one in quite some time. Speaking of, here's value. This is what we like to call the dogs, right? One that's not as sellable, but yet oftentimes that pairs up with what I like to call value. In the case of this 𝗴𝗿𝗲𝗂𝗀𝗽𝗏 Tourbillon skeleton. Now this dial inside is actually a stone dial. It's a type of quartz. The decoration from back to front, look at that. You gotta see that. You gotta zoom in on that. You're gonna get a tremendous value with pieces such as 𝗴𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏. Who knows, could this be the possible sleeper for the future in terms of investment, where people finally realize, you know what, there's a real value behind it? Because these were out there on the market at retails like close to 400,000 that were selling under 100K. But if you're looking for big name, big value, and a hell of a look, because they only made a few of these, this could potentially be one of those as well. Speaking of oldies but goodies, and also something that's come down in value, now this watch is definitely on the wrong strap. What this is a platinum Barrichelo on a bumblebee strap. I don't know why anybody would do that. That normally comes in a blue crocodile strap, which I'm sure we have somewhere. But back in its heydays, when limited offers were going through the roof, when I was just starting out as a young watch dealer, this was my thing. That was my way of creating a very small market. That market blew up. And now we're seeing a big comeback from offshores, especially limited edition offshores, now that the Royal Oak market has cooled down. Funny, when the offshores were hot, especially the limited ones, you can give away a Royal Oak. Everybody wanted the bigger the better. And the platinum was always the most desirable one because they made the least of them. They made 100 of these in platinum versus, let's say, 1,000 in titanium Barrichelos and 500 in the rose gold. I've always liked the Barrichelo, and again, for me, it was always a toss-up between the platinum and the titanium. When it came to the Montoya triptych, I liked the rose gold Montoya the best. When it came to Barrichelos, I really liked the titanium, but platinum was still my favorite. There was something about that blue dial and a matching blue strap, which this doesn't have for some reason, that always did it for me. And the fact that they made so few of them makes it a lot more desirable. Again, to me personally, this watch at one time traded upwards of over $100,000. Now they've come back down to that $75,000 price range, which I think is very reasonable for what it is. Speaking of platinum, the granddaddy of all Patek Philippe platinum watches that are discontinued, in my book, the Platinum 5070. The 5070 with the famed 𝗲𝗏𝗲 movement, and that's the famed 𝗲𝗏𝗲 movement that we all talked about. Oddly enough, same movement in the watch that I'm wearing right now, which is the Breguet chronograph. I know it's a little bit smaller, but exactly the same chronograph movement in this one versus that one. That one's about to fall. With platinum, they made the least amount of them. If I had to pick favorites from that lineup, I'm going with the yellow gold because it has a black dial, and I'm going with the platinum. Platinum is the ultimate 5070 to have. Originally, this watch sold for, I think the original retail is $50,000 today. This watch hovers around the $200,000 price range, and it hasn't really moved. It's not about the value, it's about what you have. And this is, again, this is the last chronograph from Patek before they went to the in-house movement. When we talk about value, oftentimes, you know, there are brands out there that are people like, oh, well, it doesn't really hold value well, and so on and so forth. And, you know, there are plenty of brands out there. One of those brands is Girard-Perregaux. Girard-Perregaux is a brand with a lot of rich history, a brand with a lot of iconic designs, if you will, right? One of the things that Girard-Perregaux has done extremely well is they've done grand complications, and that's what this is. So this is the perpetual calendar minute repeater Tourbillon. For a brand that doesn't have like the best resale value, etc., and things of that nature, this is a brand that's also made plenty of movements for other watch brands. And what you're looking at is a watch that probably originally retailed around $1 million for a fraction of a cost. And if you want to talk about high horology, if you want to talk about value in horology and history as well, right? Girard-Perregaux has some pretty iconic pieces and a pretty iconic history. If you go back with Girard-Perregaux, especially that are high complication lines such as this, you will find value like with no other brand, and I can attest to the quality of these pieces. These guys do a tremendous job. Now, We talked about piece uniques, and boy, is this thing unique. Audemars Piguet oftentimes tended to different markets, right? And that could be geographical, mostly geographical, right? Style-wise, they did a lot of stuff for Middle Eastern clientele. And what they've done is they've done some of these, you might say gaudy, flashy pieces for those that money was no object and said, this is what I want. There's a perpetual calendar such as this going up in auction right now. I think they only made 14 of them in solid gold. It's going to fetch some ridiculous numbers. But in that time, what they've done is they've taken these perpetual calendars and they dressed them up with highest quality rubies, et cetera, et cetera. When you look at a timepiece like this, any gem set stuff, especially going to the 80s, which is where this is from, this is going to be one of those sleepers that later on will wake up in auction and start fetching hundreds of thousands of dollars, because this is just it's not for everybody, right? Some may say it's ugly, some might make it pretty. Most will say it's so ugly it's pretty. I've seen only one other one of these with emeralds, and that's really the best this is the second watch I actually have in hand. Again, not for everyone, but if somebody ever wants one of these, good luck finding one. Always been a fan of this Aquanaut. A couple of reasons why I was a fan of this Aquanaut. Number one, they bumped up the size. Of course, this is in white gold, but my favorite thing about this is the OD green. Has to do with the military. Gives you a much sportier look, I feel like, versus its blue counterpart. Something about OD green just automatically screams to me rugged, sporty, you know, lifestyle type, you know, a sporty lifestyle type of watch, something you can kind of like beat around, if you will. I've always liked the green over the blue because maybe I'm ex-military, maybe it sinks to me in a bit of a different way, but I think just overall, it's just a good look. This is what's known as the Mercator from Vacheron Constantin. I'm gonna take the plastic off so you guys can actually see, because this is a jump hour. So the Mercator, fully hand painted enamel dials. When you get into enamel dials from any brand, any major brand out there, that's when you know instant collectible. Now, when I started, the original Mercator that they made came without the enamel dials, and this was a second version where they did it with the enamel dials. When I look at that watch, I'm thinking, you know, 1622, some Spanish ship coming down, you know, to America, discovering yet another island, and you know, shooting each other with cannons and pirates. This is what this watch says to me. When it comes to enamel painted watches, a lot of brands have done it well. Patek does it well. But I think if I had to line up some of my favorites, for example, I'll go with this Vacheron, which is probably half the price of the Patek World Time with the enamel dial, just because aesthetically, that's more of a piece of art, where the World Time and the Patek tends to make it a little bit busy and not about the dial. Guys, I want to thank Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Thank you guys all for tuning in. YouTube, like, comment, share, subscribe. I'll see you on the next unboxing and try to make it as special as I can.